TV deaths are supposed to be pretend, a twist, a cliffhanger, a stunt that gets undone by next week. But sometimes the cameras keep rolling after real life has stepped in, and the goodbye you're watching isn't a plot device, it's a memorial. Today, we're looking at 20 moments when a performer's passing didn't just change a show, it changed the people who made it and the audience that loved it. Not the sensational who shot kind of hype, just the quiet truth of losing someone you thought would always be there when the theme song started. These are the episodes where the line between story and reality disappears, and what's left is a lesson in how television grieves. Glee, Finn Hudson, Corey Monteith. Glee was built on the idea that music could make misfits feel invincible. Corey Monteith's Finn Hudson was the center of that feeling, the quarterback with a second chance and a voice that made the hopeful parts believable. When Monteith died, the series didn't try to replace him with a new solo. The quarterback let the songs do less and the silence do more. Faces told the story. Friends who couldn't look at lockers, a teacher unable to finish a line, a cast that had already cried when the cameras were off and brought that ache back for one more take. The tribute avoided naming causes. It named a person. It told viewers grief doesn't need exposition to make sense. Sesame Street, Mr. Hooper, Will Lee. On a street where problems get solved in 30 minutes, the loss of Mr. Hooper asked for a different kind of honesty. Will Lee had been part of Sesame Street's foundation, a steady presence behind the counter and in the neighborhood's heart. The writers made a choice that children's TV rarely makes. They didn't send him away, and they didn't pretend. Big Bird learned what gone means. He asked the questions kids really ask. The adults answered plainly and kindly. The emotion you see in that episode isn't performance, it's colleagues missing a friend. The legacy of that choice is bigger than one show. It's proof that you can tell the truth to young viewers without taking away their safety. The West Wing, Leo McGarry, John Spencer. The West Wing could turn policy into poetry, and much of that tone came through John Spencer's Leo McGarry, mentor, fixer, conscience. Spencer died during the final season as his character was running for vice president. The series didn't use a dramatic speech to write Leo out. It used the absence of one. Election night paused. A room full of characters who always had the right words for the nation had none for themselves. The shock wasn't scored for suspense. It was allowed to land like bad news does in real life. Mid-sentence, mid-celebration, mid-everything. The episodes that followed carry a new gravity, as if the set itself got quieter. Riverdale, Fred Andrews, Luke Perry. Riverdale is a town of heightened emotions, no shortage of secrets, rivalries, or cliffhangers. Fred Andrews, played by Luke Perry, grounded that world. He was the steady parent, the reasonable voice. When Perry died, the series chose to honor the man as much as the character. Fred's final act on screen was stopping his truck to save a stranger. It was simple heroism, not melodrama. Inviting Shannon Doherty to appear as the woman Fred helped added a layer of remembrance outside the script. The episode doesn't wink. It lets the cast cry the way people do when the kindest person in the room isn't in the room anymore. Monk, Dr. Charles Kroger, Stanley Kamel, Adrian Monk could solve anything except his own grief. That's why Dr. Charles Kroger mattered. Stanley Kamel gave the role a calm that balanced the show's quirks. After Camel's death, the writers didn't turn therapy into a revolving door. They let the loss hit Monk and the audience head on. The tribute episode isn't about a case with a clever twist. It's about coping when the person who helps you cope is gone. Monk's rituals feel heavier, jokes land softer. You feel the writers deciding very deliberately not to patch the hole with a quick recast. For a series about order, it embraced a little chaos because that's what grief does. Gilmore Girls, A Year in the Life. Richard Gilmore, Edward Herrmann. Richard Gilmore's presence was the backbone of family dinners, Friday nights, and 1,000 debates about duty and love. Edward Herrmann died before the revival, and rather than treat that as backstory, the mini-series made the absence the engine. Lorelai and Rory aren't wrestling with a single problem to solve. They're adjusting to a world where the person who framed their ambitions isn't sitting at the head of the table. The funeral scenes are messy in the honest way grief is messy. Awkward, tender, and full of the things you wish you'd said. Herrmann's portrait isn't just a prop, it's the third presence in the room in every conversation about what comes next. Ally McBeal, Judge Happy Boyle, Phil Leeds. Phil Leeds' recurring judge, nicknamed Happy, could stop a courtroom cold with a single offbeat request. He had a way of making lawyers feel like kids caught telling half a truth. When Leeds passed away, the series used the last bits of footage to let the audience feel what the characters felt. 1 minute, he's presiding. The next, he's a memory. No sweeping string section, no melodramatic collapse, just a sudden gap where a constant used to be. The best tributes don't explain, they remind. That episode reminds viewers how much texture a great character actor adds to a world, and how much thinner it sounds when that voice is gone. Lassie, Gramps, George Cleveland. Before cliffhangers were an art form, family shows like Lassie taught small lessons with big hearts. George Cleveland's Gramps delivered that warmth with no showy speeches. When he died during production, the series didn't magic the problem away. It acknowledged a reality families knew too well. There was no hero-dog solution this time. The family mourned. The farm felt larger and emptier. The story moved forward without pretending the loss would stop hurting by next week. It's a rare early example of television trusting the audience with feelings that don't resolve on cue. Hill Street Blues, Sergeant Phil Esterhaus, Michael Conrad. Let's be careful out there. Michael Conrad's Sergeant Esterhaus closed each morning briefing with that line, turning it into a benediction. When Conrad died, the show respected the quiet nature of real loss. Esterhaus didn't go down in a blaze of glory. He suffered a heart attack off duty. The squad's reactions aren't plot fireworks. They're adjustments, glances, the peculiar hush that takes over a workplace when a familiar voice won't be heard again. The catchphrase lived on, not as a gimmick, but as a way the characters and the audience kept him in the room. The Big Bang Theory saw Mrs. Wolowitz, Carol Ann Susie. We never saw Mrs. Wolowitz, but we knew everything about her. Carol Ann Susie's voice made a kitchen upstairs feel as real as any set. When Susie passed away, the series gave Howard a phone call no sitcom character ever wants. News from far away that draws a line between the day that was and the day that is. The group does what real friends do, shows up, sits with awkward silence, makes a small joke that doesn't quite fix anything. The apartment sounds different after that. A running gag becomes a space where a person used to be. Cheers. Coach Ernie Pantuso, Nicholas Colasanto Cheers was a machine for great dialogue, but its heart was simple. A bar full of people who like each other. Nicholas Colasanto's coach made the place feel safe. His stories didn't always add up. His kindness always did. After he died, the fourth season acknowledged Coach's absence without trying to fill it with a copy. Woody arrived as Woody, not as a replacement, and the show never asked viewers to pretend otherwise. When regulars raise a glass to someone you miss, it isn't a plot beat, it's catharsis. The Young and the Restless, Neil Winters, Christoph St. John. Daytime dramas can bring characters back from almost anything, but they can't undo real loss. Christoph Street. John's Neil Winters had been a central figure for decades. Steadfast, flawed, loved. The series gave him a memorial that doubled as a space for colleagues to mourn the man as much as the role. The eulogies feel like they were written after hours by people who knew where the jokes and the strengths came from. For a genre where everything is fixable, this was the moment when it wasn't, and the show honored that by slowing down. News Radio, Bill McNeil, Phil Hartman. Phil Hartman was a singular presence, precise, dry, able to shift from absurd to sincere in half a line. As Bill McNeil, he gave news radio its edge. After Hartman was killed, the 5th season opener turned The Office's chatter into a wake you can hear. A sitcom is never really built for silence, but that episode made space for it anyway. The cast doesn't try to outright the loss, they absorb it. There are jokes because that's how people who love comedy cope. There are pauses because that's what grief demands. An empty desk can tell a whole story. Smallville. Dr. Virgil Swan, Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve's appearances in Smallville carried a weight beyond the plot. As Dr. Virgil Swan, he offered Clark Kent guidance, but as Christopher Reeve, he offered viewers a real-world example of courage after catastrophe. When Reeve died, the show marked Swan's off-screen passing with restraint, acknowledging that sometimes the most respectful tribute is to keep it simple. The mentorship ends. The inspiration doesn't. You feel the writers stepping back to let the legacy speak for itself. Barney Miller, Sergeant Nick Yamana, Jack Sue. Jack Sue's Nick Yamana did two things reliably, underplayed the joke and brewed terrible coffee. When Sue died, Barney Miller did something television almost never does. It broke character to remember the person. The retrospective episode is plain spoken and moving. Cast members share stories. They lift paper cups in a toast. There's no attempt to fold the loss into a standard plot because the point isn't to continue the fiction, it's to honor the truth. For many viewers, that tribute became the moment they understood how a TV family can be a real one. Dallas, J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman. Even people who never watched an episode know the silhouette of J.R. Ewing. Larry Hagman's magnetism made him the center of the Dallas universe. When he died during the continuation series, the writers created one last mystery for JR. But the heart of the storyline wasn't a whodunit. It was a community reckoning with a figure who had defined them for decades. Scenes of the family mourning play quieter than the show's usual fireworks, and that's what makes them land. The final lesson isn't how to outmaneuver an enemy, it's how to carry a memory. Night Court, Selma Hacker, Selma Diamond. Selma Diamond's Selma Hacker gave Night Court its crusty charm, turning deadpan into a hug with sharp corners. When Diamond died after season 2, the show didn't go for a gimmick. It acknowledged the loss and moved forward with tenderness. Viewers felt the chair at the bailiff's desk become a little shrine to timing and presence. The kind of comedy you can't teach, only miss. The tone stays light, but the goodbye is real, and it lingers in the laughs that follow. Night Court, Florence Kleiner, Florence Halop. Lightning struck twice. Florence Halop stepped in as Florence Flo Kleiner, brought fresh energy and fit right in, until illness took her after just one season. The series faced the second goodbye with the same warmth it used the first time, never pretending that a quick swap could make everything the same. 2 losses in 2 years left a mark on the show's memory and on the audience's sense of how fragile even a hit sitcom can be. The courtroom remained chaotic. The grief made it human. Silicon Valley, Peter Gregory, Christopher Evan Welch. In a show that prized awkward accuracy, Christopher Evan Welch's Peter Gregory was the purest version of its humor. Brilliant, oddly formal, accidentally hilarious. Welch died during the show's early run. The writers handled the character's off-screen death with understatement. No grand reveal, just a sudden hole in the ecosystem that characters tried to fill with more hustle, more spin, more deals. It didn't work because the point wasn't to replace the behavior, it was to acknowledge the person. Silicon Valley kept its bite, but for a stretch the sarcasm came with a shadow. NCIS, Los Angeles. Owen Granger, Miguel Ferrer. Miguel Ferrer gave Owen Granger a voice like sandpaper and a stare that could end an argument. Behind the scenes, Ferrer was fighting cancer, and the series let art align with life without exploiting it. Granger's toughness softened into choices about how to spend his time. The eventual acknowledgement of his passing was careful and plain, the way conversations sound when a team loses a leader who never wasted words. The character actors' grit stayed with the show like a fingerprint on the glass. These 20 moments didn't just move plots forward, they helped audiences practice something we all have to do: say goodbye and keep the love anyway. If any of these episodes changed how you think about TV, it's because they changed how TV thinks about us, not as ratings, but as people who can handle the truth told well.